The city plain of Ravnica had long been governed by its intricate system of guilds, each holding a carefully measured portion of power within its vast and ancient walls. Among these, the Azorius Senate stood as the ultimate arbiter of law and order, a bastion of bureaucracy that ensured the city remained bound by legal constraints, whether just or unjust. And at the helm of this great institution sat Grand Arbiter Augustin IV, a man who, though blind and legless, was possessed of a mind sharper than any blade and a will as unyielding as the stonework of New Prague itself. He moved not on foot, but upon a floating bench, an enchanted construct that carried him silently through the vast halls of the Senate. The soul-sworn jury, spectral figures bound by duty in both life and death, flanked him at all times, their presence a reminder that law was not only enforced in Ravnica, it was embodied. Where other senators prided themselves on their rhetoric, their ability to weave elaborate arguments and counterpoints, Augustin IV was different. His words were measured, precise, and wielded with the force of an edict. He was a man of action in a guild of lawmakers, a force of will where others found comfort in delay. The chaos that gripped Ravnica in the wake of the Guild Pact's dissolution was both a crisis and an opportunity. The Guild Pact, a millennia-old magical contract that had once ensured balance between the 10 guilds, had unraveled when Augustin IV, an aging Boros law mage, arrested Szadek, the ancient and secretive Parun of the Dimir. It was an act that should have been impossible. House Dimir had been but a whisper, a rumor, a name spoken in the dead of night and forgotten by morning. And yet here Szadek was, imprisoned and powerless, his machinations laid bare for the first time in 10,000 years. Augustin IV recognized the moment for what it was. The city was on the precipice, its fate teetering between disorder and absolute rule. He would not allow anarchy to take hold. He visited Szadek in his cell, a confrontation not of violence but of intellect. Szadek, despite his imprisonment, still radiated menace, his form shifting like a shadow that refused to be captured by the light. But Augustin IV was unmoved. He spoke calmly, his words deliberate. Then, without hesitation, he reached forward and ended the vampire's existence, snuffing out the Parun's life as one might extinguish a candle. Yet Augustin IV did not merely kill Szadek, he enslaved his ghost, binding the vampire's essence to his will, turning the once mighty master of secrets into an unwilling tool of law and order. With Szadek's ghost under his control, Augustin IV set in motion a plan to ensure the complete reformation of Ravnica. He sent the spectral form of the Dimir Parun to the Parhelion, the massive skyborne fortress of the Boros Legion, with a singular and chilling purpose: to eradicate the Boros angels, including their leader, the fiery and formidable Razia. The attack was swift, brutal, and absolute. The once unassailable fortress was left vulnerable, its defenders weakened, its command structure in disarray. And with that, the scales tipped further in Augustin IV's favor. As the city reeled from this act of violence, yet another disaster unfolded. Momir Vig, the Simic Combine's ambitious and unhinged guildmaster, had unleashed his own monstrous creation, Project Kraj, a biomechanical horror designed to absorb and adapt, a creature with the potential to reshape Ravnica itself. But in the chaos, Augustin IV, the same law mage who had unwittingly shattered the Guild Pact, struck again. This time it was Momir Vig who met his end, his grand experiment failing before it could bring the city under its sway. Seizing upon the moment, Augustin IV called for an emergency session of the Senate. The halls of New Prague filled with lawmakers, their voices a cacophony of outrage, fear, and uncertainty. The Grand Arbiter did not need to argue. He merely pointed to the devastation, to the crumbling order, to the blood that had been spilled on the streets of their great city. And when he spoke, his voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Martial law, he declared, was the only path forward. The city needed control, it needed order, and only he could provide it. The vote was cast and the result was inevitable. Ravnica, for the first time in history, fell under the direct rule of the Azorius Senate. The guilds, once independent forces, now answered to the law, and the law in turn answered to Augustin IV. But his triumph was not to last. For all his meticulous planning, for all his ruthlessness, there was one factor he had not accounted for: vengeance. And vengeance, though often slow, is relentless. Agrus Kos, weary but determined, came for him. The old soldier, stripped of official rank but never of purpose, had one final move to make. In his hands he carried a containment device, a grounder, a magical artifact built to imprison spirits. Within it, Szadek's essence writhed and seethed, trapped but not powerless. Kos did not hesitate. With all the strength left in his battered body, he hurled the grounder at Augustin IV. The impact shattered the enchantments that had bound Szadek's spirit. Freed from servitude, the vampire's ghost exploded forth, no longer a slave, no longer under control, and in that moment, all the hatred, all the fury of 10,000 years of scheming and secrecy was unleashed upon the man who had dared to chain him. Augustin IV barely had time to cry out before Szadek struck. The Grand Arbiter's soul was torn from his body, devoured by the very force he had sought to command. His lifeless form slumped upon the floating bench, and with his death the iron grip of martial law weakened. Order, once so carefully maintained, began to unravel. In the weeks that followed, as Ravnica struggled to heal, the Azorius Senate selected a new Grand Arbiter. Leonos II took up the mantle, tasked with restoring balance in a city that had nearly fallen to tyranny. Augustin IV's legacy, though marked by ambition and brilliance, became a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most unyielding laws could not stand against the chaos of fate. And so the cycle continued. Ravnica endured as it always had. But the name of Augustin IV, once spoken with reverence and fear, faded into history, a ruler who had sought to impose absolute order and had in the end been undone by the very forces he had tried to control.